Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by Music Ally, the show that both looks at the finances of the music industry while also bringing you stories and comments about the past week in the pop business. I'm Steve Lemack, he's Stuart Dredge. If you want an easy guide to what's going on in the music industry and how it all works, then here we are, and a happy new year, everybody. We hope you're in a decent place come the start of the new year, and thank you very much for listening. We have got a lot planned for the coming weeks, responding to some of the feedback you sent us, so thank you to everyone who's been in touch. But this week, because the music biz, well, basically went on a holiday about 2.5 weeks ago and is only just now returning to its desk. This week we thought it might be an opportunity to look ahead at some of the matters which we think will arise this year. What are going to be the big stories and themes of 2026? We both, didn't we? We both wrote down some ideas, and I think we're pretty much in agreement over what some of the key issues will be. So we've narrowed them down to 3 or 4 main headlines. Where shall we? I guess we have to start with AI. Do we? I mean, I know some of you might already be rolling your eyes thinking, oh, not AI again. But I am, as you probably know, increasingly of the opinion that, for all the helpful things AI can do, it also, I think, carries a risk of making things much worse for the music industry and potentially musicians as well. I don't know. What are you thinking, Stuart, as we look down the barrel of the next 12 months? Where are we up to? What might happen this year?
Yeah, God, it's weird because it was a big story last year. I think it's going to carry on this year, like you say. I mean, I think that one thing on my mind is that we've seen some actual licensing deals, haven't we? We talked about them in recent months, that some labels have done some deals with AI companies. It's the first time that's happened, which means, like, the bottom line for artists is, in theory, if a musical AI is being trained on your stuff now, you will get paid.
Mm,
But we don't know how much you'll get paid, or how it'll be calculated, or what right you'll have to say, no, thanks, I don't want to be part of this, even if I'm getting paid.
mhm.
Those are the conversations that are happening now between labels and artists and publishers and songwriters, talking about, well, this is how this deal will work, this is how we'll get paid. But it is a kind of little positive spot to start the year, that this principle of, if you're an AI company training your model on people's music, humans' music, they should get paid for it. And I think we've found our way to this point where pretty much all the big companies in that space are trying to do licensing deals, rather than just saying, we don't need to do that, we can just take it all that we
Mm.
want. So that's the kind of that's my slight optimism before we get into the negative stuff.
Well, I was going to say, though, those conversations,
Mm.
who should be involved? Because does it feel to you as if the record industry, certainly the big 3 major labels, are having the conversations with the AI companies? But are they involving managers or artists or anyone else down the line who will be directly affected by this?
I mean, as I understand it, the deals have been signed, and now the conversations are happening with the kind of the musicians and their representatives, which I'm kind of sympathetic to how that has to happen, because I think there was an urgency to try and get deals done quickly. I suppose try and
Mm,
get these companies to the table and say, you have to pay for music. Um, but yeah, it just means there's so many unknowns. And I think a lot of the bodies representing managers and artists have been saying, look, here are our concerns about these deals, because
mm,
we simply don't know what's going to happen.
yeah.
So I don't think it's that the major labels are trying not to discuss it with the artists. I think that's what's going to happen. That's the first part of this year, is like, right, we've got this agreement with these companies.
Mm,
This is what we see it means. And there is going to be a process, because I think, and again, this is all up in the air, but as I understand it, the noises coming out of the announcements of these deals have been that artists will have the right and songwriters will have the right to say, we don't want to take part in this. That has been the general thing. But how that process works is just completely unknown. And it could be the big complication, because, I mean, think about songwriting, for example. Think about a song that's had maybe 4 or 5 songwriters, probably more in areas like pop, and those songwriters are signed to different publishers. So if one of those songwriters says, I don't want to have my work used to train in AI, does that mean that song can't be used and all the
mm.
recordings of it? Like, it could get very, very complicated in terms of actually what music can be used. But it's important. Like, it's important that every songwriter and artist does get to say, actually, I'm not comfortable with this.
Mm.
So that's the real. I think what's going to happen is, it's not just a case of the labels and the publishers saying, this is what's happening. it's going to have to be them really convincing musicians, saying, well, this is why we think this is a good thing to do. This is why we believe it is in your best interests. And this is why we want you to say yes to it. Like, it's not a case of just saying, here's the deal, it's done, accept it. There's going
Mm.
to have to be a real process of, I guess, of convincing and
Yeah,
persuading and
and
encouraging.
I understand that. I just wonder how easy it will be to backfit the deal, particularly when it comes
Mm,
to the finances of it. If you've agreed a certain percentage of money will be, will come from the people who are training the software on an artist's music, say. So
mm,
you get X amount of money, but if that money is not enough for the artist, or the artist thinks, actually, hang on a second, we're worth more than that. We should have a higher percentage of the royalties from this AI track. Then, well, we can't do it because we've already signed the deal for this. Do you see what
mm.
I mean?
Well, that's it, yeah. And it's like, it's almost, you need to start breaking it down, because there's three things really. Like, if an AI company has done a deal with a big record label, they might be giving them a big chunk of money, which is kind of just, here's the money for the license, here's the money to use your stuff. They
Mm,
might be giving them equity in the company. So a company like Suno, which is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, might give a label, 1%, 2%, whatever it is of the company. So the label then has shares in this company that may at some point be sold or go public, and there may be loads of money. So there's a question there of, okay, how will that be shared with artists and songwriters?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then the really complicated thing, which is okay, what seems to be happening is these deals involve the AI companies building new models and new services and launching them this year.
Mhm,
So again, they're almost saying we can't really backfit the finances to what we've had already, but we're going to build something new. And then that's where you'll be like, okay, so how, if I go and make an AI song on this new service and it's 0.5% Ed Sheeran, 2% Beyonce, 1%, you know, Little Grandad, um, like, how do they get paid for that? And that's, again, that's going to be the thing that we don't know yet, because it hasn't been set out. But those are the three ways money will be coming into the music industry from these companies. And I
mhm,
think in all three, you're right. The managers' bodies and the artist bodies are saying, we want to understand exactly what's being paid, how it's being calculated, and then we can decide whether we think that's fair and whether we
mm.
want to go with it. So,
There's also the point. The thing I'm still waiting for is for someone to tell me or assure me that the money that AI companies will put into the industry through these licensing deals will make up for the money that some artists will effectively lose
mm,
if pedestrian musical versions of what they do, basically impersonations of their music, start impinging on the real thing, and therefore musicians' income is lost to some of the new AI creators. Now, because we already, like we've already had conversations. We already know that there are some people who, for instance, write incidental music for TV shows who are already
mm,
saying that they've been replaced by someone who just typed in, I don't know, scary music for a tense scene in a darkened room,
mm,
and that's their work, that's their monthly rent down the tube. So, as you say, my worry is that it does bring us back to what you were saying about, it's a little bit like returning to the reaction that the industry had to Napster back in the day when they didn't know what to do about illegal downloads, which led them to dashing into getting deals done with Apple and whoever. And I don't think that was always especially beneficial to the artists, if you see what I
mm.
mean. So yeah, as you say, a lot of this is up in the air because I just have this. I mean, also we have to approach the problem that with at the last count, what did we say? There was something like we calculated there was something like 30,000 AI aided tracks landing on streaming services every day.
Oh, it's
Um,
it's now 50,000 was the latest one I saw.
there you go. So there's 50,000 new
Mm,
AI tracks landing every day on the streaming services. How on earth is that going to help the problem which we already have, which is that new human artists who are already finding it difficult, more difficult than ever to make a
mm.
noise, to make a breakthrough. How is this going to help? Because there's already so much music out there, if you see what I mean. And so
Yeah, yeah,
how do we compensate artists for that, or express our support for genuine musicians?
yeah, and I think there's two things there, isn't there? Because one is the practical, what does this actually mean for musicians? How much money are they gonna lose? What does it mean? But I think two is and really equally important is, you can just imagine musicians feeling ground down by all this, ground down by the anxiety. Like, what is
Mm.
the point of releasing new music if all this is happening? And so I think there's that confidence thing. But on the other side, yeah, I mean, I think this year is going to be a big year for the streaming service to decide exactly what they're going to do about all this music. And
Mm.
I think I broke it down. I've got 5 questions for this.
Okay.
So
Right.
the first question is, can they detect it? Like, can they tell what's fully age oriented and what's not? And Deezer says it can. It's got technology to do it. Other services are working on this. And the AI music companies could help them, because a company like Suno could watermark every track, put in like a little, put in a sort of a signature that you can't hear, but that says to a system like Spotify, this is AI generated.
Right.
So that's solvable. So in theory, they should know what's AI generated and what isn't. The second question is, do they let it on their services at all? Like, do they let people upload it and listen to it? Right now, they all do, and no one is saying at the moment we're going to ban AI music from our platform. They're all saying we're going to let it on there because we're not right quite at the point where we think we should be banning it. The third question, though, is, do they promote it? Do they put it in their playlist? Do they let their algorithm recommend it to people? Again, Deezer was very early in saying we're not going to do that. It's not in our playlists. We're not recommending it. It's just on there. You can find it if you search for it, but otherwise, no. That's a question for Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, all the others, I think, this year. The fourth question is, do they pay the same royalties to AI music as to human tracks? Or do they pay it royalties at all? And that's a debate I think we're going to see more of this year. Like, do they maybe say, right, well, in the same way that there was a talk about noise music a while back, like white noise music and things, and they were saying, okay, we're going to pay that less. We don't think it's as valuable as human music, so we're going to pay it fewer royalties. I think we'll see that debate this year about whether fully AI music. And then the fifth question, which is more simple, is if something is too close to real human artists, what do they do? And literally, so we've talked about some of the examples of AI music being uploaded to Spotify that pretends to be by a real artist.
Mm.
And the answer there is they take it down quickly, they block the royalties being paid. There's probably some improvements they can make in detecting that quickly, but that's the thing. But then the other thing we talk about is when there's been an AI project that's like very, very heavily inspired by a real artist. So we talked about, do you remember, was it Holding Absence with a human band and Bleeding Verse was there? And it hadn't done anything that you could say they're trying to clone them, they're pretending to be them. But the human band certainly felt really put out that something so close to what they do was out and
Mm.
getting more listeners. And again, that for a streaming service is quite a grey area. Like, you could, as a human, you might think actually they should be promoting the human band. They should be giving the human band, getting them in front of listeners. But that again is kind of, it's a very, very hard thing to have a hard and fast policy on if you are a Spotify. But those are
Mm.
the 5 questions I think they're all mulling, and I think there is pressure on them to come out and say exactly how they're going to treat all these things this year. So we'll see
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
there was one thing I wanted to talk about, actually, one other thing. Well, have you heard the song? You know, we talked about that song "I Run" a few months ago. It was the one
Yeah.
with the
That
vocals
rings a
like
bell.
George
Yeah.
Smith.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really interesting thing for me this year, because that, so to just kind of go back quickly, this song came out called "I Run." The vocals sounded a lot like Georgia Smith, and her label came out and said this is unacceptable because they were AI generated vocals. But then the artist Haven re-recorded it with a human singer, someone called Caitlin Harrigan, and re-released it again. And right now it's number 10 in the UK singles chart. It's had like 62 million streams on Spotify, I think. And it's a song it's a pop hit because it was written by humans. They just use AI to do the vocals. And then when that was called out, they got a human in. So that says 2 things to me, which we're going to see this year a lot of. It says to me that the musicians do really feel cross and upset and anxious when they see AI being used to kind of clone their vocals or be too similar to them. But it also says to me that there's this new wave of like younger musicians who actually do want to use this technology, and they're talented people. So in this case, it's a good song from some talented songwriters who happen to use AI in a way people didn't like for the vocals,
Mm.
and now it's a pop hit. So I think the one thing this year I'm quite mindful of is not gravitating towards all human artists hate AI. There's a lot of sensitivity, I think, but also there are a lot of young musicians who are starting to use it in interesting ways. And there is a lot of human creativity there, but there are going to be some ethical issues around it.
Mm.
But it's not as simple as human artists hate AI generated technology. I think there's some interesting stuff being done by creative people. But I'm also sympathetic to people like Georgia Smith who are like, hang on a minute, that's my voice you're using there.
Yeah. Yeah, because yeah, it's not that far away from sampling somebody at that point, is it? If you can just essentially impersonate the voice. And taking a sample and not paying for that either. But I mean,
Mm,
you see, that goes back to the point: how much will some artists lose? What do they gain, and what do they lose in all of
mm,
this? Should we talk about live music as well? I mean, here's one
mm,
place where potentially, artists, musicians can still make money. Well, the whole live music industry can can make money,
mm.
as has been seen over the past year. Live music is still very successful, but once again we always have to come back. And I know I sound like a stuck record with this, but we always have to come back to what's happening at the grassroots level. Because I know I said I had a rant about the government's new business rate policy last month. But really, at a point where we really need in this country, I think, to be developing new talent. We might get to this later on in our place on the global stage, but these are the places where new artists take their first steps, and it's and some of these places, particularly given the increased business rates which they face next year, on top of everything else we've already talked about, which is energy costs and everything else in the supply chain. But they're really. I know people will probably think it's just myself and somebody like Mark David at the Music Venue Trust. I know we're always saying there's a disaster around the corner, and some people will probably think, yeah, but it never comes. They're all there, but they're not. It's
Mm.
already happening. Venues are continuing to shut. And as I say, it'll only get worse unless the business rate increases are revoked or changed in some way, or there is tax relief given. Otherwise, we really will see some sort of, I think, some kind of a raft of, I was going to say a tidal wave, a raft of venues will be in genuine difficulty from May onwards, and I think that's going to be a story this
Yeah.
year.
I mean, what do you do? I mean, this is my question for you, really, because you're much more engaged in this than I am. What do you do if you're a music venue trust, and when you see a government on the one hand saying we like grassroots venues and want them to be supported and doing some good things, and then
Mm.
they do a tax thing that kind of could kill loads of them? Like, is there anything you can do to stop that from happening? Like do governments listen when you say this thing you're doing over there is really bad? Or is it a case of just they're going to say nice things and then some other part of the government will do something economic that's
Mm. It's difficult because the government doesn't think as one. I think that's the
yeah.
problem. You will find a lot of support for the music industry in general, and particularly there's a lot of people within Parliament, and obviously there's a select committee which is dedicated to grassroots venues, grassroots
Mm,
music, and a lot of those people are very supportive of the cause. But then it's where does the power lie? And you need someone on your side who is bigger than the Treasury. And not much within government is bigger than the Treasury. And I think this
mm,
whole, the business rate thing was just, they've just got themselves into an awful mess, I think, and didn't quite realise what the outcome was going to be. And now they're trying to find, ways of probably trying to make things easier. But all you can do is continue to lobby your local MP and get, build the momentum behind change and support. Obviously, I mean, on the plus side, we had the creation of the Live Trust last year, which is the charity that oversees the money, which is coming in from the voluntary £1 contribution on tickets at arena and stadium gigs above 5,000 capacity. And the Live Trust will, not in the not too distant future, I would say, by spring, hopefully the Live Trust will have paid out the first of the money which has come in to various people, like, who are involved in grassroots, the whole grassroots ecosystem, whether that's venues or promoters or artists. The thing, though, we need next is we need more artists and promoters and venues at arena and festival level to buy into the concept of the pound donation, so we can keep building the funds that then can be used to help smaller venues and promoters. And we, as I say, and when it comes coming back to government, we have to try and persuade them that they should be more supportive of music in the way of tax relief. In the same way that they already do for a lot of the other creative industries. There's loads of
mm.
tax breaks for the film industry. So why don't we have it for the music industry, or, festivals or small venues? I think, as I say, could be a difficult year ahead. The Music Venue Trust, by the way, will launch their annual report into grassroots music venues on January the 20th. I'm sure that will provide more insight into this. You were saying though, Stuart, that these problems, they aren't just in the UK. It's not just a UK based issue either. It's happening in other countries around the world.
Yeah, and there's been some good news really. Like I was just reading this morning about, I think Italy has just launched a fund for live music. I think it's like only got €1.5 million a year, but it's a start. We wrote about Germany doing a voluntary ticket levy, the same thing we're doing here. Australia's been putting in place sort of government programs. Like it feels like this is not just it has been a UK story for quite a while, hasn't it? Like it's been, the Music Venue Trust has been talking about this for years.
Hmm.
But I feel like around the world, people are looking to what's worked here, what campaigning has worked, and they're kind of mirroring that. I know the Music Venue Trust is helping people in Australia do a similar thing that it does there. But also, I think governments have been following this and saying, okay, well, I see the UK did this kind of thing. Maybe we can put that scheme in place. So
Mm.
in a way, it's positive. I feel like this is a problem around the world, but also the programs are getting up and running because they can see what's been happening here and what's had a good kind of impact.
Mm.
But
I mean,
and once,
I was going to say at the other end of the scale. I mean, we mentioned live music as an industry has
mm,
never been bigger.
mm,
So expect expect more mega gigs, more big gigs and tours this year, more gigs at arena level coming
mm.
this year. Although possibly not Oasis, just in case you've heard one of the
Not playing
rumours.
Nebworth.
No, well, this is the thing. Obviously, it was a big rumor at the back end of last year that Oasis were going to announce that they were playing Nebworth. The current consensus, though, if there was a if you had a rumor aggregator, right, which took all the rumors and then made one rumor out of it,
Mm.
then I think the word is Oasis to do Nebworth, but not in 2026, but in 2027. That's the consensus rumor at the moment. What it's based on, I don't know. Obviously not officially confirmed, but sources within inside the music industry are whispering about Oasis at Nebworth 2027.
I was looking at
Um,
some of the rumors. Like I think so. U2 and Harry Styles, I've seen rumored. They hope people think U2 might get back on the road this year. I thought My Chemical Romance doing 3 nights at Wembley Stadium,
yeah,
which
they are. Yeah,
is something I quietly missed. That My Chemical Romance can play 3 nights at Wembley, which is amazing. But
yeah, yeah.
that
Well,
is that
well,
information?
yeah. I
Or-
mean, here's the thing, though. Can they? Maybe My Chemical Romance can. Here's one of my worries. This market for bands reforming. I mean, it's fine, but I think we will reach the stage if we haven't already yet that there is a risk that some bands or some promoters think that the bands are actually bigger than they are, and that there's
Hmm.
more interest in them than there actually is. And also the idea that we've seen more and more over the last couple of years a band coming back we're doing the comeback tour, brilliant, and then we're going to do another comeback tour but in
Hmm.
slightly bigger venues. And I'm not sure that that's how it works. You go and see a band who've reformed once because that's great, but are more people then going to say, oh, yeah, we should go and see the reformed bands? I mean, I don't know how many times you want to go and relive your youth with the
Well,
same band.
because I guess some bands can cycle through the album anniversaries, can't they? But a lot of bands will get to the point, third or fourth album, where people started to lose interest first time round.
Yeah,
And if
yeah,
you're saying we're playing the album that everyone didn't really like that much in full,
yeah.
I mean,
But
the
I
other thing
mean,
this year.
well,
Oh, yeah, go
sorry,
on.
I was just going to say, just to emphasise that point, and this is nothing personal. I've got nothing against the Hives, but if you take the Hives last tour, at least two dates on that Hives tour, the last Hives tour, had to be downsized because
Mhm,
they'd overestimated ticket sales, and they had to, yeah, they had to take them out of the arena and down into a more
mhm.
regular venue. And do you remember? Do you remember Electric Six, the band Electric Six?
Yeah, I remember
Well,
two songs, not just one as well.
yes, yes, the two-hit wonder that's Electric Six. Again, nothing personal, Electric Six, but they took a punt on playing the Forum in London, and that's about 2,000 capacity, I think, and it was on a reasonably hefty ticket, like a £35, £40 ticket. And I tell you what, I noticed there were a lot of reduced in price tickets available for that gig in the week leading up to it.
Wasn't
So
Is it Electric? I feel like this might be a myth, and I don't want to get us sued by Electric Six because again, I really like their. But wasn't it them who played Glastonbury and played the big hit second in a set or something, and then half the tent
but
buggered
really.
off? I
Really?
think I bet there's a famous moment. There was a year when it was Gay Bar, wasn't it? Was the biggest hit. It
Yes.
was a year when that
Yeah.
was riding high. And I think they played it early in the set, which was quite a ballsy move.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing this year, actually, I just wrote about this yesterday. BTS, the K-pop icons, they're back and they're going on a global tour. They've got a new album in March and global tour, and that's going to be a fascinating moment because the last few years we've been building towards like K-pop groups have been playing arenas, then
Mm.
stadiums around the world, and this BTS tour, I think it'd be like Bad Bunny's tour last year when that was like, okay, this artist who is a Latin American artist not singing in English can fill stadiums in America, UK. BTS, I think, are going to do that. They're going to do a big stadium tour all over the world, and that's going to be maybe one of this year's biggest tours.
Mm.
Alongside, I think Ed Sheeran's going out again, isn't he? I think the weekend, but BTS will be one of the biggest tours, and that's an interesting status of where we are in this.
Yeah.
Who the
Yeah.
yeah.
And almost again, I mean, I don't know what ticket prices will be like for that, but that top end ticket price, I
Mm,
don't know how challenging that's going to become, and if you can and how much these bigger gigs will suck money out of the gigs further down the scale because you can only afford to go to one of these big gigs at the expense maybe of going to a couple of others. We'll
mm.
see. I mean, doubtless there'll be other live music related topics this year as well. There's a few. I
There's a
did
prediction for
want
you.
to before we finish. I wanted to talk about just the state of the industry in general, and especially where the UK stands at the moment, because I mean, it has felt like, and certainly since probably this time last year, it's felt like actually longer than that over the last couple of years, like we're losing some of our importance on the global stage, and no one seems to be really flapping about this apart from us occasionally. But I don't know what we can read into some of the things that happen in 2025. Not least, can I just mention the effective demotion of Warner's in the UK, which I hope this isn't a sign of things to come. But Warner's UK, essentially, well, I mean, rather than being a driving UK led voice in its own right, has, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, it's been restructured to the point where the UK office now answers directly to Warner's in America. So in effect, it's a regional outpost rather than its own powerhouse. And I wonder what are the implications of that? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like you have these restructuring announcements and you have to divine what happens and what it's going to mean. I mean, I suspect people from Warner would say, no, we're still signing artists, we're still breaking things, we're still, they'll be very cross about that idea. But yeah, I think there is a sense of, well, this has been, you say no one's flapping. I think people have been a bit worried about, is the UK just a baby America in the eyes of some people in the industry?
Mm,
Like we did today, send the big stars over here from America. Do we become that? Because so much is happening elsewhere in the world. And I think that's one of the things I've been tracking is that when you look at who the major labels have been buying and investing in, it's in places like India and Africa and Southeast Asia and Latin America. That's where they're putting a lot of their expansion energy at the moment. And I wonder if that does mean does encourage you to retrench a bit in markets like the UK, where you can say, "Wow, it's the same big stars in the US are big in the UK, so we might as well have it all together."
mm,
So I don't know. I mean, in some ways, like the UK has been really not fortunate's the wrong word, it's hard won. But like in the history of recorded music, the UK has been one of the key places for exporting music, creating stars. I think we're used to that, aren't we? We sort of see that's what the UK is. We're really important. We break
mm.
new acts. And maybe we're having to adjust to this idea of a world where stars can come from anywhere and they don't have to break here first. And we're maybe peripheral in some ways. Like we're peripheral to K-pop's rise. We're peripheral to Bad Bunny's rise. Um, and we're trying to, I feel like there's a sense of the industry trying to say, well, what are we for and how do we navigate this and how do we make sure? And I mean, I was going to talk a bit about the BPI put its end of year stats out on 31st
Oh,
December.
that's right. Okay. And then what are
And
the BPI saying? Because last year it
well,
was quite bleak. The BPI report, I thought, was it?
well, it was. And when it came out last year, the media coverage was almost all, lots of it was about there are no British artists in the charts anymore. And that was the gist of it. And so this year, I mean, the press release for it, the headline was literally a new wave of global British breakthrough talent. And it talked about Olivia Dean and Lola Young and Sleep Token and Sky Newman and Sam Fender. And it talked about how many UK albums topped the albums chart last year, which is 27. And this whole press release, it's got the stats on how music listening grew, which is kind of the main story normally. But the whole story really was, look, British acts are doing much better now. We're on the up again. And that, uh, I don't think it's just spin in a sense, in that this is true. Like Olivia Dean's done brilliantly. Sleep
Mm.
Token have been one of the biggest stories in recent times in terms of a rock band breaking globally, but also being good on streaming. Um, so it's all true stuff, but I think it gives you a sense of the sensitivities that the BPI wants to say, look, the sky isn't falling in. We can still create global breakthrough artists, and that says to me a lot about how the British industry is feeling. It's feeling a bit defensive, but also a bit. It wants to kind of shout about the success stories, I
Mm.
guess.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I just hope there's substance to this, and there'll be progress in bringing other artists through and encouraging innovation. Because as much as it's saying, we've always had a place on the global stage because we've produced artists, we've produced innovators, musical scenes that other places in the world have followed. And obviously, as you say, there are, in terms of innovation at the moment, that it's happening all over the globe now, isn't it? There are new genres coming out of different countries, and the different countries are being encouraged by the fact that certainly some of the streaming services have entered into territories where they're aggressively marketing because they want to expand. And that's the one good thing, is it's encouraged local scenes, whether it's Polish rap music or it's
mm.
Afrobeat or something. But so it's happening all over the place now. But can we support the people over here who are attempting to do something new, while also, as regaining our ability to write a good pop song that someone thousands of people in America will also like and hopefully pay for. One last thing.
Mm.
Yeah, I mentioned the Warner's restructure, and there have been quite a few people laid off in the music industry over the past year. I mean, you were saying, I wonder if this means that some of the people who are leaving the majors, and there are some quite experienced people who've left the big labels, whether they may go on to start their own companies or do something new themselves because they bring with them a lot of experience, or will they move into the independent, essentially then move into the independent sector, either with their own thing or going to work for emerging independent companies. That was your point, I think.
Well, yeah. So, like when I used to be a tech journalist, there was a thing that happened when a big tech company was sold or went public, like a Facebook. Then people there would make lots of money, and then they'd leave and set up their own new things, and you'd have a kind of 100 startups would start blooming. In the music industry, it's a bit bleaker because it's about layoffs. But I mean, there's these layoffs. They've been at every major label, and it's not really about the most talented people stay. Often the talented people are the ones who suddenly find themselves out on their ear for no fault of their own,
Mm,
other than that their department was just rationalized. So there are loads of people I know who are just people I've met before and thought they're smart. They know what they're doing. They're doing cool stuff. Who are suddenly out there going, well, I need a job now. And it's a really interesting moment, I think, because if they're techie people, they're launching startups. So we talked to a new startup recently they're basically people who used to work at Universal doing sort of marketing, and they've made this really interesting service that's going to help music marketers independently. So they've done a startup. Other people are launching their own labels, signing artists. People are setting up new marketing agencies, but also people are going independent, being consultants, just floating and saying, I know stuff. I want to help artists who are kind of on their own. So DIY independent artists
mm,
do the things that with my major label knowledge. So I think we're going to have this year of if you're independent, you're going to suddenly have access to a lot of interesting people and knowledge and skills who've
mm.
come out of that major. And I feel this should be positive. I mean, I'm saying that backed by no kind of evidence or proof yet because it's just all been happening. But there's a lot of good people who are suddenly looking for work. And again, when you've come out of the majors world, you either go back into it, you go to another major, or you go, I don't want to be in that world anymore. I want to do my own thing. And I've heard a lot of people saying that, variations on that.
Mhm.
That so I think it could be to go back to the point right at the beginning about artists who are anxious at the moment and thinking, how do I cut through all this noise with all this AI music? That there are suddenly all these people floating around who can maybe help and want to help. And that's one of my positive things for the year is like this is the silver lining to layoffs, which are never easy.
Shall I give you my positive? And again, I've
Yeah.
got no, apart from gut instincts, I've got no actual. I can't really give you examples yet because obviously we're only a few days into the new year. But I think it's going to be a really good year for British music. And I don't know why. I just think this year's going to be pretty exciting. I mean, I've seen a few artists during the course of the last 12 months who I think may sort of go on to break this year. But I think we're quite well set up if everything falls into place to have quite an interesting musical year. So
Mm.
that's my positive. Shall I say, all is not lost. That's what I'm going to
Well,
say.
I think I've got a theory as well that the more everything is online and digital, and the more AI is everywhere around us, and I think people are gonna have a hunger for real connections with artists, and that's good for live music, and it's also good for kind of people supporting artists they love and saying, "Yeah, actually, I love this artist, and they're maybe struggling." So,
Mm.
yeah, I think the more things all do go AI and digital, the more there's a real strong pushback of people saying, "I want connection with humans," and that's what I need.
Well, look, there's a few. There's a few ideas of what may happen this year. Rest assured, though, dear listener, we'll be here every week with news from the week, musical tips, and gossip from the industry, and insights into who's doing well and who's just blown it. And if you think that's something that your friends or colleagues or maybe even budding musicians might like to know about, please do spread the words. You can also support the show via Patreon. In fact, if you sign up to be a super fan, you get an extra 15, 20 minutes or so of me and him chatting about music and money. This week, we'll probably do possibly more about heritage acts, ticket prices, my reflections on the Rockaway Beach Festival where a DJ's at the weekend just gone, and whatever else comes up. You can gain access to that by becoming a super fan of the show at patreon.com/the price of music. Alternatively, of course, if you'd just like to get in touch with us via email, the address is thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Anything you don't understand about how the industry works, any observations you have, or things that you think we might be able to make sense of that have always bothered you about the music biz, the price of music podcast@gmail.com. Thanks, everyone. Here's to 2026. See you next week. Take care.